Hi there, and thanks for joining me today, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back. I'm Anah Parreli, and today we're going to be talking about the ruling number 5. Now, just to be clear, and just a reminder that when we talk about ruling numbers, we're talking about an aspect of a person or the primary pathway of their life, which is going to identify traits and so forth. However, every ruling number has got positive and negative traits attached to it. And the other thing is that if I was to be doing a numerology report, I would be looking at more than the ruling number. So it's not a comprehensive picture of the personality or the person, it's a snapshot. And in my experience, usually it's right. Anyway, moving along. So an additional reminder here, of course, is that when calculating the person's ruling number, what you do is you total up or you calculate the sum of the numbers in the birth date and then reduce it down to a primary number between 1 to 9, unless, of course, they are the numbers 11 or 22 or 33, in which case they're said to be a master number and have specific power associated with them. Now, I'll be doing a specific video dedicated to master numbers after I've finished doing the ruling numbers, because you can have master numbers as ruling numbers or day numbers, and the day number is considered to be a secondary path, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Okay, so the other reminder is that when we're talking about Pythagorean numerology concepts, numbers either vibrate to the feminine or the masculine. So even numbers are associated with the color silver and intuition and what's considered to be is it the yin? I'm having a mind blank. The white aspects of the feng shui symbol, you may as well say, whereas the odd numbers, such as the 5, they're associated with the masculine. I got it back to front. Yes, so with the feng shui symbol, white is masculine, black is feminine. And when we talk about the masculine concepts of Pythagorean numbers, where it's associated with a 5. Sorry, I'm still getting my brain together. I've decided to get out of bed and get cracking on this first thing in the morning. Okay, so 5 is associated with the colour gold because it's considered to be masculine. So people whose birth dates calculate to the sums of 14, 23, 32, 41, 50, 59, 68 and 77, as outlined here, they're all considered to be the ruling 5, because if you look at the 68 and the 59 and 77, of course, you add those numbers together, that adds up to 14. So then 1 plus 4 equals 5. So that's how you break it down. What else have I got to say here? Nothing. I'll go on to the next slide. So probably the primary attribute of people with a ruling 5 is this desire for freedom, or they have this need for freedom. But at the same time, they do have a certain conventional element to them. But anyway, I'll refer to the notes that I've done before I started to read this. Sorry about the ums. Okay. So basically, people with a ruling 5, they generally have a highly sensitive nature and a driving compulsion to express their feelings. Now, that might be a driving force, but it doesn't mean that they can always do it. Certainly not from a verbal perspective anyway, or even written, although from my experience I think some of them will actually resort to poetry, surprisingly, when you look at some of these people and the freedom lovers. That I say surprisingly because I'm thinking about a couple of big burly miners that you would look at and think that there was nothing emotionally sensitive about them, but beneath that exterior there's this beautiful poetic person, but they keep it well hidden. Anyway, moving on. So they definitely are adventurous. They're always seeking new experiences and change. They are generally I need to actually to have looked at this. Okay, they are actually very good communicators, but not of their feelings. Okay, so just putting that into perspective, I do have it here. They're good at communication, but they don't enjoy the monotonous routine of a daily grind. So most of the 5s that I've met, they like to be working with others as part of a group or a team, at the very least in a partnership. They're generally very earthy, clever. They've got a very quick intellect. They're adaptable, and they have this amazing capacity of concentration. Now, when I'm talking to you about this, I'm actually visualizing a guy that I knew many years ago who actually did carry, he was older. I think by the time a person reaches a certain age, these traits tend to be coming to the fore, or they become more overt. Anyway, yeah, he was actually involved in, he was a mines inspector, I might as well say. So yes, he had to be able to research, he had to be able to process content. He certainly was not very good at expressing his feelings. He was very centralized with that, but at the same time he was a good person. But anyway, it's not just him. I know actually a female who's got the same attributes, beautiful soul, but that need for independence is there as well. So okay, they're logical, they're clever, they're quick, they're adaptable. They've got this wonderful capacity to concentrate, which makes them perfect when it comes to doing things like investigations and that. The 5, they do have an important role, actually. I'm just trying to think how to articulate this. I'm thinking this is more, the next bit, what I want to refer about is their life purpose. So, yeah, I'm going to discuss this on the next slide. So what I'd actually put down for the wrong slide is to do with the communication and the emotional expression of the 5, people with a 5. And this is because if you look at the birth chart, which we'll have at the end of this slide or this video, you will see that the number 5, or the placement of the number 5, is actually central to the plane, to the chart. So it sits in between the physical, spiritual, and the mental plane. So the concept behind this, or the Pythagorean story of it, is that as a 5, as a ruling 5, their role on earth is to learn to express their spiritual, their emotional, because the 5 on the chart acts as a conduit, if you like, between the doing and the thinking. So that's their role. They have to be able to, oh God, sometimes it's so difficult to articulate things. Okay, so the way I see it is they're the ideas people, their intellect, they are able to see how to put an idea into practice, and that's their job. But to also do it with feeling. I'm not sure I'm articulating this right, but anyway, let's crack on. I'll see if I can find another thing. Oh, I think I've got a better way, okay, of describing it, which is that when we look at emotional expression, okay, the reason why it can be difficult for them to express is because verbally and articulate, is because this will push them into other ways of exhibiting and expressing. And when they express, they do it with a really unique way, and that could be artistic. Like I said, some of them can be amazing poets. So equally, some of them can be amazing artists, and what they can produce when they're attempting to express themselves, that helps them to process their feelings and then to be able to think about them. Now, I just want to point out, when we say the word art, everybody's immediately, I think, their mind will jump to, oh, they're a sculptor, or they'll sit there, chipping away, be a carpenter, have a canvas or whatever. That's not necessarily true, actually. I mean, it can be true, but as I just pointed out, poetry is also an art. And the guy that I was thinking of that was the mines inspector, nobody would ever know that he actually was a tattooist. He was a tattoo artist. And when he, apparently in his younger years, when he would feel really incapable of expressing, he used to actually go in and draw all over himself, you may as well say. But he was, because it was less acceptable, obviously, to have body art back in those days, what he used to do was put it in places where he could cover it up. So if people weren't working with him and in his role as law enforcement, they would have no idea that he was absolutely full of tattoos. The woman that I'm thinking of, actually, while I can't say that I've noticed or observed any particular artistic talents with her, I would say that she probably, her emotional expression comes through charity work, perhaps, and kindness, doing kind things. Just a thought. Anyway, on to the next slide. So when it comes to the distinctive traits for the ruling 5, generally these people actually are quite intuitive. They just have this really natural gut instinct. Whether or not they define or articulate themselves as spiritual, this is still within them. And they are generally, as we said before, freedom loving. Yes, absolutely. They're helpful, they're kind. They do have this rebellious side to them as well. So they tend to be non-conformists. I've got here that they're usually very good natured and they are determined to enjoy life, but their goal of enjoying life doesn't mean at the exclusion of anybody else's, so they're quite compassionate to other people. But if their freedom is inhibited, they can become quite sullen and moody and even apathetic. So within the context of daily life, obviously very few people have this capacity for freedom where they can just pick up and go. In some ways it reminds me in thought of the seeker out of the tarot card as opposed to the Hierophant, where they can just pack up and go on a moment, go where their heart calls them. So they have that, but it's actually not something that anybody really has the liberty to do these days. So for the 5, part of that tendency, or it becomes a negative tendency, because that desire from freedom can take them into some pretty difficult times. I just need to cough. Unless they learn to control and manage that aspect of themselves, because of this rebellious and non-conforming aspect to them, they can end up finding themselves living on the peripherals of society, perhaps living off welfare in preference to being dictated to by an employer. I'm not going to have anybody tell me what to do, stuff it. I'd rather, be unemployed and living in poverty. That can be an aspect of some of the logical processes. But at the same time, everybody needs money to survive. They might want that, but some personality types will lead them into criminal activity as part of financing their lifestyle of freedom from employment and dictation, shall we say. Now, I'm just saying these are potentials, okay? They're not necessarily good as business owners or business people, because that requires a level of commitment that they're actually not prepared to put in. It would lock them down, especially if it involves signing a contract that they can't get out of with a certain amount of ease, should they want to. Now, I just want to clarify here that although this is a negative trait, that doesn't mean that they can't do it, because at the same time, the woman that I know, she works on a contract basis and her contract is up for renewal every couple of years. And she has worked for the same business owner, I think, for probably about the last 15 years. But she renegotiates the terms and conditions of her employment through that process. So that's a really good example. They can become moody, as I said, and experience stress-related health issues if they don't learn to obviously emotionally express and to control this desire for freedom. Just to be clear here, in my experience, or observations rather, the criminal activity is not up there as a primary marker of the ruling 5, but potentially a secondary one, okay? From my observations, there's more likely an issue around addiction, such as smoking or alcohol, not one that we look at, well, not currently, it's probably on that way, where we look at the addiction and go like, oh my God, that's so terrible, these people have got addictions. It's not like that. What it's more like is that they work hard, they play hard. So generally they are quite big drinkers. It's like, as soon as I'm talking about within the Australian context, they're very highly functioning. They can go to work, but as the day is coming to a close, they're the sort of people that might turn around and say, beer o'clock, They're waiting to get home for the workday to end so that they can get home and sit back and have a drink in the comfort of their lounge room. But I've got to say, in regard to the male that I was talking about, who was a manager, sure thing, every day like clockwork, he was through that door. I think about 4 p.m, he would crack open his first tinny for the day, and then he would drink solidly until bedtime. And he was rather, because I'd stayed with him for a little while, he was rather interesting to watch, because from a behavioural perspective, he really knew his own limits. He would come through that door and he would continue to work on his computer, because there's that workaholic aspect as well, and then come 6 o'clock, he would close the computer down after 2 hours of slowly having a beer, all right, and then he would knock off the rest of them that he'd set aside, because that's where the self-discipline would come in his example. Was he had allocated himself actually half a carton of, I think it was mid-strengths, that he could have every single night when he got home. So in case people aren't aware, that's 12 beers, and he could justify to himself they're mid-strengths, they're not full strengths. And so by the time 6 o'clock came in, he would then finish off that half a carton, and then he would stagger off to bed. And for another woman that I knew, she wasn't a beer drinker. So, everybody exhibits differently, but certainly women that I've seen, they are inclined to have a bottle or two of wine when they get home at night, as opposed to that half a carton of beer. But they're self-disciplined in that approach as well, which I find very fascinating. So the ruling 5 is considered to be pure energy. It's a very, very busy number, as explained in the previous slides. There's this tendency to be all work and no play, or vice versa. So it's considered to be a roadrunner of life, and that meditation is essential for helping them to manage their stress levels, shift away from some of that dependency on substances such as alcohol or cigarettes, or vapes, I suppose, is the current thing. I don't know how popular that is. But also to learn patience, because they can be quite impatient with other people, especially in the business fields, where I think I mentioned that they're actually pretty good as not so much the business owner or the business manager because of commitment levels, but rather they excel in some of the middle management levels, shall we say. So, okay, they need to be able to recognise their limits, manage their stress, develop some patience, and try and get some moderation and balance in their lives. And this meditation will assist them through that process, and also to be able to put boundaries and parameters in place for their own health and well-being, I guess. So just manage their health, manage their time, learn to emotionally express would be the best advice. So when I was studying numerology, Dr. David Phillips' opinion is that he believes that people with a ruling 5 are best suited toward fields that include writing, painting, or the travel and hospitality industry, or as social reformers. Now, in my experience of my client base in more modern times, I would say yes, there tends to be an association with them excelling in middle senior management levels, especially if there is a requirement for expertise in their fields. I would also reiterate that business of they work hard, play hard, and that this is actually impacted on their family relationships, and their partnerships. They either haven't married because of the commitment aspect, or they have perhaps had a couple of serious relationships. I'm open to feedback here. If people see this and go, well, that's not true, I'm a 5 and I've been married for 25 years, and that would be really interesting to know. Because I would also say too, once again, we're talking about the energy of the number, and when it comes to the entire personality, you look at things like not only their ruling number, their day number, there's energy attached to their name numerology, and there's also the star sign and the astrology that comes into the formation of the personality, shall we say, or the influences on the personality. So once again, it's not standalone, but your feedback would be really interesting. Okay, so what I would also say is, because of this desire for freedom, travel-oriented roles would do really well. And while there is this business for freedom, I've known nurses that work with, I can't remember the name of the organisation, is it Medics Abroad or something like that? They seem to be able to produce money very well and get into these traditional fields and actually just do really, really well at whatever they put their hand to, but they still have that humanitarian edge to them. And in many ways, if you end up in a conversation with them, they might not be out there actively waving placards and banners and protesting, but they certainly do have a conscience of justice, if you like, and fair play. So, I mean, yeah, that definitely underpins them. Well, I think we could say with ease that whatever the 5 does, they do it, they throw themselves into it. And that includes, just so you know, I have seen people with, I think it's a 32.5, that have ended up going into alternative and healing modalities once they've reached maturity and they've learned to master some of the inner demons that they've got inside of them. And that includes things like excessive drinking. I mean, addiction's a pretty loaded word. Nobody really likes to hear it, but let's say that whether I need 3 bottles of wine every night, they seem to, at a certain point, suddenly go, you know what, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm not going to be owned by my alcohol, and I'm going to redirect my life in a new way towards the healing pursuits. This is stuff that I've seen. Okay. David Phillips said that they can be ambitious. I would say definitely. And they definitely enjoy mental and intellectual stimulation. Absolutely. I would agree with that because they're very intelligent people. And if you can sit down and have a conversation with them, they can be really interesting. And they can challenge your own thinking and help to expand your own mind. So I believe this is part of their path as well. So hopefully, within what I've just said, I've explained to you why or how it is that communication is a gift for them, because they don't necessarily communicate as in telling people what they should do or talking about their emotions and their feelings and that. But if you're in a conversation with them, there is that mental stimulation where they challenge us to look at the world in different ways or to review and revise our opinions, our thoughts and our beliefs. And this is a true gift to all of us, to be able to challenge us to articulate, express and form our own beliefs. It's a wonderful thing, especially when it's done with kindness and regard. I think I'm going to do a really summarized version here to try and whip through this video, okay? And just bring it down because there's a lot of slides here. Okay, so with this particular vibration, there tends to be a fascination with subjects such as philosophy, study, religion, law, and history, right? It's a very intellectual vibration, and it explores the whole humanity aspects, right? Now, because communication is here, because they've got a vivid imagination, they can actually achieve quite elevated states of awareness. And the 15/5 is a number that is, attributed to what is called the ancient scribes. So these people, their gifts might include, should they ever go that pathway, automatic writing and channeling as part of just their own personal development and growth. And what else is there? It is important for these people to grow their own mind, and they know it. Okay, so they will be doing this whether they can call themselves spiritual or not. They will be trying to seek understanding and expand their knowledge around these particular topics. So in my observations, it's the 23/5 that tends to be this workaholic of drink hard, play hard. They're associated with honesty, loyal, passion and generosity, certainly when living upright. The tarot card of the King of Wands is a really good representation because they can achieve these positions of authority and financial success. As I said, not necessarily as the business owner or business manager, but because they are so high energy, they are able to direct this energy into work. The work aspect becomes their form of creativity, their outlet and release. Now, the beauty of these people is that they're very happy to share tips and strategies to people and to give advice to those people that are not doing as well financially as what they are. And within this context, they do carry the communication skills verbally and in writing. And they can, actually, yes, this is the one that lends itself to being a bit of a wordsmith and a poet. I forgot about that. So they can also excel at things like songwriting. So if they are this way inclined, they're the sort of people that just do it because they love it, and they're really high performers. So this is very interesting. We will talk about that when we get to the famous fives, because this is where it comes to the fore. Fascinating stuff. So people born under the vibration of the 32.5, these are the ones that have got a lot of really internal fortitude, strength of character, and they're courageous as well. They're not too frightened to use their knowledge to benefit and enlighten humanity. Now, this is a particularly powerful vibration when it is combined with honesty and truth and a responsible sense of duty, and where these traits are put into action, all right? Because this vibration speaks about power and success, okay? But to get to this, they have to, it's essential that they maintain their integrity and their high ideals and to not compromise their standards for those people that have got ulterior motives and agendas and particularly questionable morality. They are these people would be encouraged and advised to really remain steadfast in their principles and to be patient, step by step, because if they can do that, victory will be assured for them of anything that they put their hand to. And the beauty of this is that they're charming people, they're generous people, they're very likable, right? So they make really good leaders because they've got these progressive views and a progressive outlook on life. And they manage to combine the practical, the philosophical, and the spiritual. What else? They have a very heightened sense of justice under this vibration and that fairness, and they encourage others to trust them. So it's very easy to trust somebody with a 32.5 when they're living in the upright aspects of their nature, and they've got a real lot to offer humanity through this power of their warmth and their vitality. So the 41.5 is a bit of a rare bird as far as occurrences of numerical sequences go. There's really not that many around with a 41.5. However, those that do, they have an inherent sensitivity and a level of understanding that is different to others, most likely. They're very loving. They have faith and courage in the abundance of the universe, and they're able to stand steadfast in the face of adversity. They're fighters, although not necessarily with their fists. They've got staying power and endurance, and they can draw on these qualities when they're attempting to achieve their goals of future security and to have that material quality of life, if you like, at home and at work. So the beauty for these people is that they're generally surrounded by a really loving family unit and friends, because they're actually very charismatic, as we say, loving and sensitive individuals. And these people that are around them, they're also very protective of them. Home is important to them, and their home must, well, it's essential for them that it be comforting, warm, and loving. Now, as individuals, they will radiate a sense of power. I believe we've got a 41.5 actually example in the famous people, but we'll look at that later. But they do have a sense of power and an emotional intensity about them. And so part of their life path is to direct their power and intensity into creative outlets and to use self-discipline to control their base desires of instantaneous gratification. Because as we've said, one of the negative traits for the 5 is that they are freedom loving and they just don't want to commit to anything a lot of the time. Well, for the 41.5, that's a challenge for them, because once they throw themselves into their path, they have a lot of power. And so the key thing is to tap into the spiritual forces and get a greater understanding of consciousness and what their actual purpose is on earth, if I can speak. And once they can do that, their cup will be flowing over and they'll feel very, very fulfilled. It's actually yeah, I'm pretty sure I need to check something, but I'm pretty sure I know exactly who's in the media at the forefront. We don't necessarily agree with everything that person says, but we know they come to it with passion. So we'll look at that in a little while. So once again, I'm really going to try and whip through this to make this video shorter. Okay, so for the people with a ruling 50/5, change, innovation, and communication are the keys here, and happiness and security, right? So it is associated with the 10 of Cups, which is a family number and about fulfillment. So these people are advised to use a rational process in the control of their emotional energy, because they can be easily emotionally manipulated, actually, more so than other people perhaps. They must learn to allow themselves to be guided by their intuition and to be a little discriminating, discerning around the practical side of their nature, and manage those extreme emotional sensitivities and feelings of dependence, because sometimes they do feel dependent. They don't like to feel locked in. Remember, there are 5, so they need to have some independence, and they don't like to be confined in one place for too long. So they will be on the lookout for new places and new experiences, new activities, and that kind of thing. So the suggestion to them is to try and make each move that they do as progressive as they can. Their capacity to communicate is vital to their well-being, because it stimulates their agile mind and their perception. And this is what makes them successful in their professions, especially when they're dealing with the public. I think what their true gifts are is that they're innovators, and this is what helps them to create change in the world. They bring fresh and new ideas to the world in which they work in, they live. They're advised to really focus on meditation as part of managing any stress-related conditions. And what is it here? They need to be cautious on how they use their energy and try to avoid that self-gratification aspect that we talked to before, especially if it relates to the senses. Because if you think about this, trying to deliver this in a non-crass way, because they're such loving, sensitive people, it would be very easy for them to just go over to physical gratification as opposed to spiritual and psychological gratification. Once again, it's going to be influenced how they live and their personality type by the astro sign that they're born under. So potentially somebody that's a water sign might find themselves under this vibration, being very tactile, shall we say, in want of a better word. And if they're Scorpio, I'll let you guys work that out. So I'm really trying to get through this. Okay, 59.5 is vibration of growth. These people are continually seeking to evolve themselves and to improve themselves. And they have great courage, determination, fortitude, and discernment are key things here for them. They have the capacity to rise above challenges and to succeed, but they've got to ensure that they use their strong will, determination, and these attributes wisely. Now, discrimination, of course, refers to the serenity prayer of show me when to hold on and when to let go. So they've got to learn to rely on their intuition with that. They have an independence and real faith in their capacity to make their own decisions and draw their own conclusions. And that means that if they're in a conversation, somebody says, oh, X is Y, actually it could be the person that turns around and says the sky is blue. The ruling 59.5 is going to say, well, are you sure? And they'll have to go out there and have a look themselves and go, well, I'm not sure that that's really blue. I would say that's more dove blue, something like that. They have to have their own conclusions. Now, this driving force of expanding themselves, or whatever we want to call it, the self-evolution, self-development, professional development, right? This is part of making them who they are. They are not going to measure their success and their achievements based on what other people think or say. They're going to measure what they consider to be their success based on their own experiences and their belief of what success is, because they might consider themselves to have succeeded at a goal where somebody else might turn and say, well, not really. But they will think they have, and rightly so, because they will look at their experiences in context, right? So the other thing that's relevant here is that because of the energy associated with the ruling 59.5, they have to guard against impulsive and high risk and even dangerous behaviours. So mind power is represented with this combination as well. And I should actually rephrase that as they have power of the mind, because these people have the capacity to be really impartial in their explorations and investigations of new concepts. And they are this need to know, or the desire to know and to gain understanding, becomes a driving force for them, and this is what takes them into new places. It's what leads to the adventurous side of their personality. And anyway, they have a belief in the unity and the dignity of humanity, so they will also fight for their convictions. Once they have formed a solid viewpoint of anything, they're prepared to stand up and fight for it. So the 68.5 is actually very ambitious. They're very shrewd, they're practical, They like to attain prominent positions within society and to have material accomplishments. They're very capable, they're very patient, and they know and understand that a good education is a catalyst for higher achievements, if you like, and positions of distinction. And that's also associated with material security. So you'll find them utilising all of the information that comes their way if it is considered by them to have merit to achieving the goal that they're looking toward. Okay. They have a very keen sense or eye of discrimination and sorting the the chaff from the hay. Anything of practical if I can speak, because they are so shrewd, if it's got a practical consequence, very little is going to escape their attention. They will notice even the small things. They see things for what they are, and they are not generally sucked into falsities or lies, so it'd be difficult to exploit a 68.5. They're very serious. They have mental discipline. They carry themselves with dignity and pride. They are aware that they know that by managing their affairs successfully, then they're well positioned to give advice to others. It's, we have people in life that will turn around and tell you what to do, not because they know, but because they've read it in a book somewhere. These people are well aware. The 68.5 is not like that. They learn by their experiences, and they believe that it's the experience that gives them the authority to talk to other people about their experiences and to help them achieve their own successes. So they're capable of achieving high-level positions or professions, if you like, that require communication, accuracy, and precision. So that can lead them into pretty stressful roles. And the suggestion here is to really include meditation in your life as part of relieving stress and tension and raising your own awareness and getting a balance in your life. I don't think there would be too many 77.5s, if any, around these days, or potentially even for the next few decades. But if there were, it's a case of this is a very fortunate vibration as far as numbers go. It is a master number for the accumulation of wealth. And yeah, I will just say that, tremendous energy in this particular vibration. There's inspiration, wisdom, and the added consciousness, and basically just prosperity. They're just so astute and so shrewd that abundance and protection and good fortune, legacies, wins, all of this kind of stuff. And it's not just about the money factor, because people with a ruling 77, they're also got some really positive personality traits of tact and diplomacy, combined with heightened awareness and sensitivity. What a shame. I don't think we're going to be seeing many of these people for a while. But if we did, that's what we could hope for, I think. Let me know if you know anybody with this vibration, because I can't think of any. So it was quite difficult to find people, when I'm trying to get the famous people together, it means I've got to Google a lot of famous people that are on social media, get their numbers, and try and find people with specific birth sequences. And what I can say is there seems to be an abundance when it comes to fame. There seems to be atypical numbers, and then numbers like this one, it was quite difficult to find some. And clearly, when we look at this, we've got a little bit of insanity, and I'm really sorry. I think her name's pronounced Aisling. Aisling's not insane, but obviously she's got a mad sense of humour. But when it comes to the fives that are famous, there seems to be an abundance of 23 fives and 32 fives that are represented. So this is why we're looking at these through. So Vincent van Gogh, he's a 23-5. Most people will be aware that his form of expression was through the arts, that there was issues around his sanity, and that apparently when we talk about emotional expression and conflicts and that, most people are aware that he did cut part of his ear off. Well, apparently the story goes that posthumously we are aware that there is a belief that he suffered from bipolar, and that when he cut his ear off, he actually cut the whole ear off in a fit of rage, apparently, after an argument with a friend. So, I mean, if that doesn't represent a difficulty in expressing your emotions, I'm not sure what is. Perhaps internalising the rage. Then, of course, we look at Adolf Hitler. what a gem he turned out to be. He doesn't need much of an announcement, of course. Now, he's a 32.5. We've all heard about him. We all know that he was certainly gave off the appearances of being insane. But what does his numerology say about him? So I'm not going to review his birth chart here. I'm just going to say that on his chart, when I did have a look at it, there is nothing major or astounding on that chart to reflect that he would end up taking the pathway that he did. There is the elements. What was shown on it was that he had an inquisitive mind. He was a seeker of knowledge and understanding, which I think most people are aware of that as well, that at some point in his life he had a fascination with Egyptian artifacts, which is obviously where the swastika came from and stuff like that. Thank God he turned it around the other way, because his use of it actually took away from the true energy of the swastika, shall we say, bastardizing metaphysical. But anyway, originally he was sticking to his birth plan, attributes, if you like. This is what it looks like to me when I look at the chart. But then it appears that there is a complete deviation from his path and his charts and his potential. So if I was to try and explore this from a let's make meaning and get understanding from this, what I looked at with that is I thought, look, my suspicions are that the deviations actually relate to his physical health and his inability to put limitations and boundaries on himself. And by this, I mean that most people will also be aware that Hitler was a raging drug addict. He was addicted to opiates and amphetamines. And so we could say that there was that lack of self-discipline there. And in fact, actually, this ties in with that criminal aspect that we were talking about. He was definitely perceived, obviously, in the early part of his introduction in politics as being charismatic. Many people may not know this, actually, in modern times. And he was considered back in the early days as being a human rights activist for the German people, not for the Jews, obviously. You can do your own research on what this looked like, but it was all post-World War I. This is why he got his popularity and ended up getting where he was by the time World War II came around. But anyway, there's a couple of other things that were going on here. He is believed to have been suffering from syphilis. Okay, and I did a bit of research on whether or not this would affect the brain, and apparently, yes, it can. So I think that this combination of syphilis, addiction, inability to put boundaries on himself, getting in with other people, because he was charismatic, so he got to the top of his field, and then he must have had all these other really questionable personality character types around him as well that just didn't put checks on him. Anyway, I'm not going to go too far in that. Suffice to say that what I did learn about syphilis is it can include psychiatric disorders, such as psychosis and personality changes. And I think that it would be reasonable for all of us to suspect right now that this could be an explanation for what was going on, and why he did what he did. Okay, so there's something else in there. Based on... Okay, so now I'm going back to Van Gogh for a moment. Based on Van Gogh's birthday, I believe that there are indications and suggestions that he had psychic ability, and that when he was doing his paintings, and that he may well have been channeling, but who would actually know in this day and age? So after Hitler, it would be great to follow up with Aisling, if that's how you pronounce your name, because she's an absolutely hilarious comic. I love her. So where we've talked about somebody with a 32.5 that is really questionable intent as a human being, we've got Aisling, who has got the same ruling number, but clearly different numbers on the birth chart. She's got the same ruling number, who is a comedian and actress. Now, I did see that I saw an interview with her where she actually wears crystals in a bra. So obviously she's interested in metaphysical subjects. I think we can safely conclude that. But there's no indicators in her birth chart of her having psychic ability. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have them. Her birth chart also has the arrow of intellect, which means that this busy mind, or the intellectual capacity of the number 5, is enhanced on her level, and it would explain why she is so quick in her comic responses. It also would indicate that she's got a very good memory. I believe that it's likely that she suppresses her feelings, and that there's a risk that, because comedy is really good for this. She might be a bit of an intellectual snob with very little patience for people that are less clever than her that she might think are stupid, right? She's unlikely to turn around and say you're stupid, but when people have the wit that Aisling does, they can actually make these little quips in ways that are non-offensive or inoffensive. So anyway, that's our famous fives. So John Cleese is another positive example of the 32.5, and he's also a comedian, which is one of the reasons why I want to have him and look at his chart. He has, I haven't put the arrows up here, but on his birth chart, he's got the arrow of the planner, and he also has the arrow of frustrations. Now, the planner is the column that's got the 1, 2, and 3 in it. That's the arrow of the planner. And when people have this arrow, they tend to be very methodical in their approach to life, and they're always planning out the next stage. The column next to that, which has got no numbers in it, oh, by the way, the 5 would be sitting, if there was a 5, it would be sitting on the spirit plane in the center of the chart. Okay, I forgot that I was going to put that in. Anyway, back to the arrow of frustrations. These people experience a lot of feeling let down by other people because they get disappointed that other people don't hold the same values and ideals as what they do. There's other indicators on his birth chart that when he was a child, he probably was not one of those that would get out there and kick the football around, that he'd be more comfortable lying on the couch, playing with his invisible friends, actually, probably, and spending time processing his thoughts because he does have that busy mind. I believe age has mellowed him, probably a lot more. Age mellows everybody, but within him, his approach, or what we're seeing of him, I notice that he has more recently, succumbed to the populist calls about his shows being politically insensitive in the past. And I actually sort of think, he's that old now that he's probably like, who needs it? Let's just say what they want. But I find it a little bit disappointing because I actually wish that the current younger generation would learn some humour and learn to laugh at themselves and some tolerance and respect for other people, because while John's humour in his shows today might not meet the sensitivities of the world, they were, at the time they were produced, they were actually making political statements anyway. That was what humour was used for, was to show the ridiculousness of society in ways that were non-offensive back then. So the point of let's look at Fawlty Towers, because that's become a big one where everybody's like, you were all mean to Manuel and all of this kind of stuff. Well, I believe that even the Spanish thought that Fawlty Towers was funny, but the point of John's comedy actually expanded the way people thought about immigrants. It puts it in people's face, and you sort of like, oh my God, if I go and stay in a hotel, I'm going to not be like Basil Fawlty or whatever. So they taught respect. So it, in a light way, I guess is the way of saying it, So I think I'm very disappointed that people are targeting people like John Cleese now and saying that they're inappropriate or turning on them with any negative emotional attachments, because everything is contextual, and during the time frame that these shows were created, that was context. But at the same time, in all fairness, humour doesn't translate to everybody and in different cultures, because I realise in England people thought the Goons were funny, but I've never found them funny. The British people love them, but I think humour relates to the experience of the country that you're living in. I think that's probably the best way of me describing it. But the Goons' humour was something I could never relate to. But Billy Connolly I could. But, that's all about experience as well. And what these comedians did, they were actually very political, and they deserve to be credited, actually, rather than pilloried, in my opinion, of course. So, my friends, rushing, that is it for today. We've talked about the ruling number 5, and who would have thought that there were so many ways to get to a ruling number of 5, but there is. I'm really interested to hear your feedback. In a way, I look at this as this is actually potentially a bit of a research activity, unofficial, of course, on my part, because I can tell you what I think and believe, or my interpretations of the numbers, and then you can come back and go, yeah, no, whatever. It's just all part of growing ourselves and putting it together. Nothing is concrete and the numbers are not standalone. But anyway, that's it for today. I will be back next Monday with ruling number 6, but you can catch us on Fridays with the self-healing. This week we're going to be looking at an introduction to Reiki. I went down a rabbit warren again. We're also uploading quotes and inspirational stuff on a Wednesday at the moment and doing a brief art reel on Tuesdays. Anyway, and of course, yarning on Sundays. So for now, my friends, thank you for being part of my journey. Have a wonderful day. Take care. See you soon. Bye-bye.